What is up with the sudden jump of the 2021 Star Wars Galaxy Chrome cards? If you happen to know, is there an explanation?
Yeah. So I think it's very hard to prove causation. And I'm just going to keep using analytics terms because that's my roots.
That's right.
It's easy to show correlation, right? And so when I'm talking about correlation is you can identify drivers. The reason why causation is so hard to prove is like everybody wants to pinpoint one event until like you have the data, receipts, the proof. Like you can make a story that'll show correlation, and most likely it's going to be right according to data. Causation is you have to prove that, like, say, I just mentioned shuckle cards as a
Mm-hmm.
character.
Yeah.
We have to prove that somebody watching this stream confirmed they were on the stream and then went ahead and bought up a bunch of shuckle cards. Like that is causation. Watch somebody say something.
Mm-hmm.
Correlation is it the driving factor? Like, let's say a content creator, makes a large sale at a card show, and it's a rare Star Wars type card from a set that happens to be Chrome Galaxy, which on its own is a good set. You'd have to look at other drivers too, taking the trend of Star Wars, and does that influencer content creator sale, is that the point where everything peaks so much that it's the top driver? So for those who haven't run, it's called a multivariate regression analysis. The output will tell me those variables I throw into it, which one has the most influence. It's an idea I've always played around with. What I want to make sure like there's value to the hobby, I think there is to the collector. And it wouldn't just be Star Wars. And let me explain it a little bit more. And if somebody listening, has analytic skills and wants to do it, even better. I am fully confident that you could get there. So let's think about sets that not only Star Wars, but in the public mind, right? Public court is being pumped, dumped.
Mm-hmm.
I think the wording around it is a little misleading. And I think those who are actually doing it are bringing up that like, hey, it's negativity, or
Yeah.
it's not really. It's you're marketing something you're trying to sell. The way they're doing it, I don't agree with, and I can explain that later.
Okay.
But take some sets that all of a sudden it doesn't 100% look like organic growth. Like I've done Marvel card analysis. I was excited to get that. I was looking at a time series. Okay, can I predict out the value? And this was before, there was stuff with alt going on, and that was out in the public, and all of a sudden PMG's out of anywhere. But my model identified like, whoa, you don't want to touch this time period. Like average prices are coming crazy. And I looked into it, and it was a set group of sales types of cards. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, it's serial numbered cards. They're not enough sales. Like doing my due diligence in data science, you should kick them out. So I have a whole presentation on my site that I actually present at Comic Cons, and I have 2 slides dedicated to it about how this is an outlier, and maybe I'll analyze it moving forward later on, but I really have to think about why. Like I can't even use that. I have to kick it out. I was doing an MCU impact analysis,
Yes.
and it would have unfairly and incorrectly weighted MCU projects that came out during that quarter.
Okay.
So it would have been like an incorrect analysis. It would have been everything's going to the moon, like hurry up, buy everything MCU. So the idea is like if we can think of sets and then find a set that's organic growth, like everyone is agreed upon, like, okay, that's pretty safe. We can look at like the incrementality of different sets, and you can have more confidence as a collector buying. Now as the analytics guy, it's going to seem weird to do like an anti-analytics pitch now. Like, don't let it be the only thing that drives you, right? The same as like, don't be influenced by reels that you see or
Yeah.
stuff that's going to be in people's PCs forever, and then you just happen to find the same card for sale or once in a lifetime deal. Like you shouldn't 100% be listening to Pancakes over here, who is saying like, oh, here's because I might find something in data that it's like you don't really like that. There's probably not going to be a lot of people who are going to buy that, right? Like, no, we're not going to buy up Black Widow because you're saying like, oh, Scarlett
Yeah.
Johansson's never being in the MCU again. It's probably gonna go up. It's probably like, some things have to pass the sniff test.
Oh,
Both sides of the fence.
mhm. What do you think of? We talk about Marvel PMGs,
Yeah.
and I've asked this question to a few other people, and I'd like to get your thoughts. Prices have gone up;
Yeah.
they've kind of come down some. Where do you see this going next year, 2 years?
So I have a lot of thoughts. There's a podcast I love listening to, and it's a podcast I started listening to when I started to think like, okay, is there any other Marvel collectors still out there? Right? Because when Pokemon blew up, I went through all my binders. I was like, okay, let me check all my childhood stuff just in case. I did some like comp evaluations of all my Marvel stuff.
Okay.
We're talking things were like $2. I was like, okay, maybe there's no other like demand out there besides myself. And I just kind of kept collecting for myself, adding to it. Then I came across like a podcast, MCWW. I might have got that wrong, or MWCC, but it's a collector's podcast, and they were like really informative about the sets.
Mhm.
And then it blew up with, obviously PMGs, and their hand was kind of played to start talking about evaluation. But one of their latest podcasts, they had Upper Deck on it. And this is where like what's happening in the market like is affecting products. They were talking about like all the exciting, like they watch the market and see the reaction. And I'm glad there's a company that's out there. But so now you're going to be getting more PMGs and Spider-Man, which, that's great for my daughter's collection. Now that PMGs have cooled off a little bit, they
Yeah.
might fire back up with Spider-Man, but I'm anticipating that I probably can't get her Spider-Gwen PMG. Like that's not going to be in the cards for us.
Yeah.
Like I have a bronze version from like the set she was in, but there's things like even like that we're passionate about, like we got to make financial decisions, and it's like it's going to be hyped up through the moon. Oh, I use X-Men Metal as an example, right? Like that was my first, I consider like high-end Marvel set I ever opened, willingly, like knowingly that it was high-end. And it was the first time I ever pulled a PMG.
Okay.
So like my hands were shaking, like, oh my goodness. Because basketball collectors, that was like a once in a lifetime thing.
It was.
And then you're seeing an influx of PMGs on there. And then you start seeing guaranteed number cards in boxes. And it goes to myself, it's like, okay, when I was talking about like the currency of like trading in your mind, like that is like PMGs as a whole for Marvel are pretty easy to get. Top tier characters, just because of the expansion of the set, right, is still like hard to pull, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'd never pull a Spider-Man PMG in my life. That's not going to happen. It'd be very lucky. Like, I pulled a card in Marvel that I thought I would never get, and I didn't even know it was in the set. I opened a box of Spider-Man 3 and I got a Stan Lee autograph.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God, I didn't even know he was in the set. And I was like, so happy. It's probably that's why I got an 8 because I probably damaged it in my hand.
Well,
But
excited.
it's like awesome, like PC ad. And I've met Stan Lee when I was little. And, we share the same birth date, December 28th. So it was like, that was awesome for me, created a bunch of my stuff. I think if Upper Deck keeps putting out PMGs in every set, I mean, they're going to do an Avenger set, so there'll probably be another refresh of PMGs. It's just something we try to do in our line of business. I do analytics for marketing. Is
Mhm.
you got to understand when you're over communicating something. So beyond people being opportunistic and, making reels and, saying this is in forever collection, and then you watch the paper trail, they make a sale they couldn't pass on, or there's people like curating collections for investment apps, alternate investing. I could see a situation where it's like, that PMG is just, there's so many out there, right? Like it's never going to be like Luca base, Zion Lake
Yeah.
base
Yeah,
levels.
I've heard that argument.
But imagine you did an analysis and you could get to the data and answer a question like how many numbered cards across all sets of a character or of a player are out there. It might change some people's perspective. But at the time, like, hey, if you pull it, it's still a cool card.
That's right.
I'm just not convinced unless the printing slows down a little bit and they put it on the shelf. Like that's why everyone got excited for X-Men Metal. It's like, oh man, they're bringing back Metal Universe.
Sure.
When it comes out every year, we're back in 90s situations. Like that's what worries me about Star Wars a little bit. Like if you've actually been collecting Star Wars for a while, Topps has been putting everything out. And like the question about like why is Topps Chrome all of a sudden, tweet that set, Galaxy Chrome. Like you got Mandalorian Chrome coming out. There's
gonna be much more too.
Yeah. So much out there.
Who knows what's coming with Obi-Wan? I mean, we know the content because I talked to Sin City, who's in here a lot.
Yeah.
And him and I talk about what's coming up on the calendar.
Yeah.
And there are going to be products and cards that's going to be produced from that entire calendar.
Yeah. They I mean, it's a marketing engine, right? What I really like about that stuff, and very low value, and you can just search it, whatever, like Comic-Con exclusives are out there on eBay. You can find them. Promos for the shows. Like they're not necessarily part of a set, but they're cool to have. But they're printed through the roof because they're handing it out for free.
That's right.
So it's like a risk there. It's fun. Obi-Wan, I think it's going to be a great show. I think it might end up starting like a cycle that you're alluding to. And like, Sin City's been mentioning too. It's like, okay, because what's going to happen after Obi-Wan? Usually another Marvel show. And then you're going to have, I know Mandalorian's already in production. So you can see you're pretty much getting in season, off season for non-sports.
True. So, that is how it's playing.
It's interesting.
What's kind of the difference? Because I always think about this between the cards that come out for Marvel and the cards that come out for DC.
Yeah.
Because you hear people talk about Marvel PMGs and Marvel cards. But what's going on with DC cards?
Yeah, I think most recently, and I love the discussions that I have with my followers. One of them is Marvelous Packs. Mm-hmm. He's always willing to give me like his opinion on things, and it's great. He mentioned a DC set to me, and it wasn't really my thing, but I can see why he was excited about it. It provides an NFT as well of your hits. So like DC's being more innovative when it comes to that. It's just where about like the company's focuses are, right? DC sets, there's some hidden gems out there, I think. It's with non-sports, it's like there's tiers to characters, right? Like, okay, you got Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. It's hard, right? It is unless they start, there has to be some big event. Like when I think about like, okay, what could be similar to MCU Impact, which showed a good short-term impact. That's what the data told me. It didn't tell me like it's driving long-term effects of particular cards or characters, but for the short term, it helped out. I think of, Black Adam.
Yep.
If you think about like, okay, what is going to put something up high, but at the same time, it's like, you got to think of if you're trying to profit off of things and time a market, just like search engine optimization. Like if you list the Black Adam card and there's like something really rare about it, you probably have to put Black Adam, DC Comics, Shazam. Like, is The Rock going to make that character a household name? I don't know. There's a lot of other factors. That's why I think, like, effects of movies, events like that, I like to call them marketing effects. Like, it's just a correlation. It's not causation
Yeah,
because there's so many factors in it. Like, are they written well in the comics?
that's right. Because I was just in a comic book store today, and there was conversation
Yeah,
by some of the other people there about the
yeah,
Morbius movie.
yeah.
And before Morbius came out, people were very excited about. I need to get my hands on these comics. And when Morbius was introducing Spider-Man, and that didn't. The movie did not spark more interest.
No, like everyone appreciates characters and have interactions differently. The characters I loved from Spider-Man, like villain wise, were people who I could relate to. Doctor Octopus was probably as far as like an animal type based villain. Like he's got a lot of animal based villain, but he could have been Spider-Man, right? There's a storyline where he was Superior Spider-Man through comic book logic, changing
Yep,
minds.
yep.
But he's a good story of like, man, we're all one bad decision away. So I knew like, man, when he finally made it to the movie in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, that was going to be just a great character to have on the screen. Very hard to mess up, and even like the Evil Dead director couldn't mess it up. And then like reprising the role in No Way Home, it's like, man, people are going to really appreciate that. He's not going to dial it in. And Dr. Octopus is a great character. I loved Mysterio in the
Totally.
comics because I always thought like, man, if it could get on the big screen, like the visual effects it could do. I always kind of took him as like, he's like an average day guy, he's trying to make his way,
Mm-hmm.
And he tries to outsmart him with illusions. It's cool. And I know there's been like other multiverse versions and adaptations where he actually is like mythical and magical, but I knew like that would translate great. But it's not gonna Mysterio cards aren't gonna go up high, right? Like Doctor Octopus cards like went up a little bit, right? But still to sell that card, it's Doctor Octopus, Spider-Man, Marvel, comics. And it's like, okay, are they really looking for a Spider-Man card or a Doctor Octopus card? So I think of that when I come to like, okay, with DC is like you gotta put in the hero and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people are going to know even Shazam, which is unfortunate.
True.
One of the earliest characters.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the you have Marvel card collectors, and then you have Marvel comic book readers and collectors. There is a kind of a gap between both groups.
Yeah.
Do you think that there could be a bridge that brings those two groups closer together? When you go to events, like you're going to go to MegaCon,
Yeah.
you're going to see some people that are thoroughly immersed in comic books, some people that are thoroughly immersed in cards, but few people that are thoroughly immersed in both. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Right now, I'm just going to go from my experience. The gap is too large. I mean, I read comics as a kid, right? But I also collected cards as a kid. I don't think I would have been collecting Marvel cards if I didn't collect Marvel cards as a kid. I would have been just building up my Marvel comic collection. That's what I would have done. And I see from people who attend my panels, we'll use Pokemon. When people talk about like, hey, Pokemon's the highest brand IP worldwide, like, oh, these cards like have so much potential. It doesn't relate. Like Pokemon, you can break it up into manga readers, watching the TV show, playing not just the main series game, who plays the mobile app. There's nothing in those games that are trying to push you to cards, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like comics may be a little bit easier than Pokemon because I remember like back in the 90s, there'd be like, hey, here's a new set on the back. But I mean, man, attention spans are so short today, too. It's like how many people are getting through to the back of a comic anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, you got digital comics now. Like,
Yeah, you do.
that's been a lot of fun. Disney Plus has the whole like ultimate universe you can watch through comics
Yeah, you
on
can watch
there.
stuff that, yeah,
Yeah. But
way
like
before I was born. Yeah.
what I'm getting to is like I'm going to do a Disney panel, right? Disney cards are a thing. There's Disney trading cards, goes back all the way to like the 1930s.
Hmm.
What would be my conversion rate if I tried to like do a Disney trading card panel to that audience who live and breathe Disney? It's going to be a hard sale.
True.
It's going to be okay, why would I do that? Like, I'd rather put my investment and my collecting into like Disney collectibles.
Hmm.
Like, okay, like let me get something that I know is like parks exclusive. And it's just, I'm not saying that it can't happen. It's just, it's going to take a village, right? And it's really, I think there's a more likelihood, and we've already seen it, right? Is that somebody from another card collecting aspect will go to these IPs more likely, right? Like, sports can go to Marvel. I've seen Pokemon go to sports. Like they start at Pokemon, go to sports
I've
because
seen that.
they start realizing that, oh wait, refractor's kind of like a holofoil. Oh, you
Hmm.
have serial numbered cards. Oh wow, and I've seen the same Pokemon to Marvel. It's been like, oh, I like the WotC artwork. Here's Marvel masterpieces. It's a whole artwork set. But like that's like voluntarily somebody liking trading cards.
Yes.
Like it's gonna take a lot of education and really because it's opportunity cost is what I'm trying to get to.
That
Like the
is true, right?
opportunity cost of collecting like PC items.
Yes.
Like if I take on something new because my daughter likes it, like it is not wise of me to just take it net new. Like let me de-invest in somewhere else.
Yeah, that is how it has to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.